Hello?
Hey Lawrence, it's Steve.
Yeah, I know. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, Steve, I like that. Your voicemail recognizes the phone number and then announces the guy's name, whoever's calling. I like that. Okay, what do you got, guy? What do you got?
So Lawrence, you've told me about your cold calling and sales training. Can you describe a little bit about what you do specifically?
I usually select people who are already in a selling environment, but they just don't know how to actually do cold calling per se with even before this economy that we're present, that's current right now, people are always having difficulty initiating, transacting, and closing deals. And all I did was
Right.
just say, hey, it's not about getting the nerve up. It's about thinking about the thematics. Hey, you got to feed your family. You got to eat. And why not do it? And it's always good to have somebody say no. It's always good to have somebody say no because you can go back to the bullpen and you can work on your pitch, your delivery, how to set it up, and even going to the guy's business when it's closed. Okay, and
Okay.
observing things, going there on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night, and a Thursday or a Friday. Maybe
I
maybe
see.
maybe you might want to talk about the parking that he has to offer customers or clients. Maybe you want to talk about what's on his website, what you notice in a newspaper ad, or what some other his competition is doing. So rather than just going in and says, hey, this is what I offer and this is how much it is, and you can make the check out too, do some silent observations. And maybe you don't even mention it to him that you came to his business as a silent customer or a secret shopper.
Okay. I used to do cold calling a long time ago, and I remember I would always tense up, and it would always be I didn't want to come off as a salesman, and I didn't want to use any cheesy tactics. So, with regards to you, what's your background and experience with cold calling?
Well, I started in an environment, I always sold, whether it was network marketing, whether it was cable television services, whether it was me having a storefront itself. So I always sold, and I always tried to keep close to the emotions of the buyer or the customer. And, if you have something, let's say, that's really hot in demand, if you're selling Google AdWords or Google Voice, that's in demand right now. I was impressed with your voicemail recognizing me and saying, hello, Laurence, I'm busy right now. I'll be right back to you. I'll call you as soon as possible. I was impressed with that. So if you've got a product that people are impressed with, it's not really selling. You're just having a conversation about it. And well, just let me back up for a minute. I think instead of selling, I think conversations are a better way to position the sale. I mean, even if you're there and if a guy's standing in the store, and more often than not, because of the economy, he's had to lay some people off who used to stand at the cash register, who used to be in-store sales help or answer the phones. If you're visiting the guy, you try to look at what he likes, what his likes are. I mean, if he's got a picture of himself with a big sailfish or a swordfish, or he likes fishing. If you see him with golf pictures, you talk about golf. You talk about fishing. Talk about his hobbies. Talk about, hey, is that your family? That's a good-looking kid. Where does he go to school at? Is he still in school? Like that. And don't always just talk about what you're selling or why you're there. You try to develop a relationship. And from the relationship, that's when you can become a salesperson then, or a consultant, or someone he could seek out for free advice. But you want to keep the free advice to a minimum, because otherwise you'll never get him as a customer. You'll always have him as a friend who knows he can get free advice from you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a line we always have to watch out for. All right, so you're saying we should start this conversation,
I would say you start a relationship first. You start a
start a
relationship, and
relationship.
then comes the conversation. If you're not a stranger, if you have a relationship, you're not a stranger.
Okay, so what's the best way to start that relationship?
Well, coming to a chamber meeting is a great way to start it, as you and I have both witnessed. And what I do with photography and video, it always gives me a reason to have a conversation after the fact.
So, going to chamber meetings, do you have any sort of lines that you've rehearsed and scripted that you've used to make the conversation easier?
Um, Well, it usually starts with hold still, let me take your picture. It usually starts there.
Oh, let me take your picture.
You try to, as a salesperson, I think it's incumbent upon any salesperson, no matter what you're selling. It's always good to know a little bit about a lot of people's businesses. And you can give him the opportunity to fill in the blanks for you. You don't want to come in as an expert on what this guy's been doing for the past 18 years or why he's doing it, where he's doing it. You just try to listen. And listening is key. It's that conversation thing I talked about. Once you strike the match and light the fuse, you've got a conversation. And if you listen during the conversation, you can always use the same thing that he just told you. You can implement it into your conversation as how do you do this and how do you do that? And he'll gladly share it with you because he's looking he's looking for as much help or input as he can get. That doesn't cost a lot, of course. And if you can help him, if you have something in your repertoire and your sales bag that you can help him with, by all means, you want to offer it to him and talk about it. And just as curious as you are about his business, you want to make him equally as curious about what you can do to help his business.
What are some of the strategies and tactics that you, let's say you're trying to pitch him your photography, how would you make him interested in your photography services?
Oh, Steve, that's real easy. Right now, with the propensity of people wanting to be on YouTube, everyone has got a website that may not be functioning as well as they'd like it to be, or drawing the foot traffic or inquiries or website traffic. Basically, you want to be able to say, hey, look, that's a great product you have in the store, or if you're having a grand opening, you're having some type of event, you want to be able to say to him, hey, look, I think it would be a good idea if you took some pictures of that and put it on your website.
So you make it relate back to him.
It is a relationship, right?
Right, of course. And the most difficult thing that I have, or that I've heard from other people as well, is I can get the conversation started, we kind of become friends, like we know each other, but how do I transition that to, asking for the sale?
Well, in a perfect world, Steve, as a salesperson, you don't want to ask him for the sale. You want him to ask you how much. You want him to like your conversation so much, he's asking you more and more and more. And, obviously you're there as a salesperson. By now he's recognized that you have something that he could use. But most of all, you want him to say, you want the product to sell itself. You don't want to sell the product. You want it to sell itself. And there comes a point in your conversation where you have to stop talking. You must stop talking. And the first person who says something, I don't like to say it like this, the first person who says something is the loser. You can talk yourself.
So shut up.
Yeah, so shut up. You can talk yourself out of a sale as well as into a sale.
Okay. Can you give me an example? Like, have you ever talked yourself out of a sale?
There have been several times I've done it. None comes to the front of my mind. I can recall them saying, something, my brother-in-law does something similar to what you do. Let me talk to him and find out. And naturally, he's going to work the brother-in-law for the price that he wants. Maybe the brother-in-law owes him a ton of favors. But you want to be able to position your sales or your product as, I know there are other people out there doing the same thing that I'm doing, but this is how I position myself to eliminate the competition. I will service you, and I will service you unlike your brother-in-law. I will service you unlike my competition. And I like you, and I like what you do. I'm interested. And if it's a restaurant, car dealership, whatever it is, if you could turn this guy into a couple of customers or some referrals, it's always good to salt the mind somewhat. Hey, Steve, I met someone from the Asian American Business Council. I might take you to a meeting with him. And he sees I have an Asian friend. I'm familiar with Asian people. Okay? You got to do your research. You just can't come in and shoot from the hip and figure I'm the fastest drawer, and I'm going to draw faster and I'll make the sale. And persistence is a big part of it also. He may want it in January, February, or March, but he doesn't have the money. So if you go back in May, June, July, he may have the money, and he's going to remember you, and he's going to respect you for being persistent.
In terms of persistency, what kind of system do you set? Like, how often do you follow up? Do you have a set calendar that you say, oh, every 2 days, every week, or every month? How do you follow up?
Well, I like to use analogies when I talk, Steve, and I guess you've noticed that by now. Selling is like it's like a toothache. It goes and it comes. It goes and it comes. Now, I don't want to equate pain with selling, but it's sort of like you got to go, you got to come and visit him, and you got to know when to leave. You go and you come. You go and come. You want to constantly stay in the front of his mind. And obviously, you're going to notice things about his business if he's doing something to, if he's adding on something to his business, if he's increasing the size of his parking lot, working on a sign outside, under new management, things like that. But you don't want this guy to forget about you, and you don't want to go every 6 months, obviously, but you don't want to go every other day either. So the whole idea is that you have to get a feel for when you think you should go back. You've got to get a feel for what his temperament is. Does he tolerate you? Do you have a good chemistry with him? It's like meeting a woman in church. She's in church, so you have to recognize that she's a spiritual person. If you meet a woman in a club or a bar, she's got a drink in her hand. Well, that's a different conversation that you want to have, and it's a different feel that you would have for her. Do you understand?
Yeah, I've heard analogies. Making a sale is sort of like picking up a girl.
Well, it's sort of like picking up a girl, but it's not like you're picking her up for a one-night stand. You got to stay with it.
Right.
Again, maybe it's not a marriage, but maybe it's just an engagement, a prolonged engagement that he sees you. And something too, even if you go to his business and you don't say anything to him, and you get a table, if it's a restaurant, you get a table, you take somebody there, or 2 or 3 people with you to the business. You take people with you. He sees that you like coming to his restaurant. He sees that you'll bring people there, and he respects that. If he never sees you, if you never eat his food, he says, hey, I know this guy's got to be going to a restaurant somewhere, and why isn't he coming to my restaurant? Why doesn't he never ever come to my restaurant? So if he sees you, perfect example, I was in Newark about 3 weeks ago, and I stopped in on a restaurant that I'm trying to develop a networking group in Newark using his restaurant, whether in the morning or in the evening. And I knew he wasn't there. I called ahead, and they said he wasn't there. So I purposely got there before him, knowing that they said, oh, he's going to be here about 3 o'clock. So I got there about 1:30. And along with somebody who I was treating to lunch. And when he walked in and he was, talking with the help, organizing, getting acclimated to what he was supposed to be doing, his daily routine. And he looked over and he saw me, and he wasn't sure it was me. And he says, hey, what are you doing here? I said, hey, I just wanted a good place to eat, and I knew I could come here and get a good lunch. And I introduced him to the person I was with, and he was flattered by that.
Oh, nice.
And he remembers that, so when I show up, I can show up unscheduled or I can show up scheduled.